you're super important to, I think, you know, the legacy of arcade games and video games, and you're continuing a lot of what your dad started. Tell us a little bit about, yeah, tell us a little bit about your continuing your dad's legacy and what he did and what you're doing and the relationship between the past and kind of what's going on now. How do you kind of connect those two worlds, and what do you feel like your responsibility is to arcades and gaming and that sort of culture, right? Because you could do many different things. You have experience in communications and marketing, and you have family that's into all types of investment and inventing and all types of stuff like that. So why do something as unique and what seems to be as challenging as convincing people that arcade games are important and that gaming together is super valuable still?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. And convincing people that it's important is like the main thing I do right now. But basically, like, I come from a big family. So I've got 7 siblings. We love playing any kind of game together. We play a lot of board games, video games. But because there's so many of us, couch co-op is definitely the favorite category. And by extension, because we hunt down play together titles, I'll then bring those to my friends and otherwise. But I started to notice a couple things about 8 years ago. And a couple of things I noticed was that pretty much anyone that you put the right game in their hands, they're going to really enjoy it. Whether they're a gamer, they own consoles or not, if they don't consider themselves any kind of gamer, and you put the right 2-button game in their hand, they're going to have a blast, right? And we're all playing together. There's high fives. There's, some smack talking. It's a grand old time. Meanwhile, the proper gaming industry has sort of gone down this rabbit hole of hardcore, where you now have this concept of a gamer, and many people are like, that's not me, but I like games. It's just that the whole gaming industry seems so focused on this gamer profile, that video games have kind of gotten away from most people, right? Mobile has sort of mitigated that, but and mobile has really shown a lot of people that they enjoy games. But mobile's kind of its own beast, right? Where it's very I don't want to say lonely, but it is kind of lonely, right? It's people on their private device, and no one's ever gonna really interact with you on a mobile game. There are, multiplayer mobile games and stuff, but again, most of what we see in video games, and when it comes to online play, the vast majority is very, the mechanics are focused on the game, and the fact that you have other people on voice is kind of part of the game mechanics, if you will. It's like playing Fortnite is not it's not as much of us hanging out as it is us trying to win, right? Whereas there's something different about a couch co-op game where the rounds are quick. There's a lot of socializing that happens in between. Because the rounds are quick, you can take quick breaks and stuff like that. It sort of changes the flow of the gameplay, and the social atmosphere is different. So for a very long answer to your question, the general, we felt like there's a couple things missing in gaming today. One, the gaming industry is so focused on that hardcore player, and we feel like there needs to be more focus on the mid-core player. As an extension, the Wii did a very good job of this. The second reason is that we've sort of lost that social aspect of video games. And I would kind of blame that more on hardware than it's both a hardware and curation problem, where most people just have an Xbox with one controller, right? Controllers are expensive unless you have a lot of friends over all the time. You don't have multiple controllers. It's Xbox or PlayStation, whatever. If you are a PC gamer, you might not even have a controller, even though there's tons of games that play well with a controller. So it's kind of this problem of hardware where like you have to be a certain kind of dedicated gamer to have the gear to play these like sort of multiplayer couch co-op style games. And most people don't. So I think that the style of play needs some more common hardware. And I think that, the gaming industry is too focused on that hardcore player. I want to add one more thing into this.
Yeah, please.
So my dad, over the years, has had hundreds of people come up to him and tell him that they met their significant other playing Pong. Right. So Pong was like a 2-player game only, mostly existed in bars. And it turned out that as it sort of started to catch on, it became very common for women to use it almost like a pickup line. Like, will you play Pong with me? It's, very like low barrier, very easy icebreaker, non-threatening. And now you're like sort of locked into this one-on-one game with somebody for just long enough to get to know them and continue the conversation.
That's huge. That's huge. And I think that, when I read, I have a couple of the Atari design books, over the years, its logo changes and the art, cover art changes and the philosophy behind the design. And I just find it completely fascinating. I think it's just an incredible story how Pong and gaming literally brings people together. Like, not just, we're playing together, but like you meet a lifelong partner by playing Pong. And I think that's just incredible. But it really goes to show that you're thinking about the things that, Kai and I think about when we're thinking about like the purpose of games and why we play games. We don't play them to kill time. We play them to meet people, to connect with people, to learn how we think and how other people think. So when I found out you were, designing and releasing these super cool installations, these arcade cabinets that you could just, plug into the wall super easy and everybody can be a part of the living room now. It's like now brought back to life and people aren't just on their phones. I thought that was really fascinating. I think what I want to give you a proposition. I want to see what you think about it. So I made a small documentary talking about part of the reason why arcades started to diminish in the States while they kind of flourished in Japan was because America was really into commodity culture and really wanted to sell a singular product like a Nintendo or an Xbox. Maybe this is my hypothesis. And I was curious to think, do you think that that's the same way? How did culture get so shaped, or gaming culture get so much, get curated so strongly by hardware and get shaped so much by this very narrow narrative, this very specific narrative that is not any way representative of the people that exist that love games? How did this happen?
Yeah, so I actually have my own theory on that, sort of with arcades in the US versus Japan. In the US, I think arcades died out for kind of a very specific reason. Like, arcades initially were, you were able to get more tech or better tech into an arcade machine than you could at home, right? At the beginning, or back in the 80s and 90s. So like, whatever game system you had at home, whatever was in the arcade was better, just because the tech, was at the time was bigger, so you couldn't fit it into a home unit. Mm-hmm. So the arcade, survived in that environment. I mean, at first, there was no console, so the arcade was the only thing. But as that changed, Atari, it was like every Atari game was just kind of a little shittier on the Atari than it was on the arcade. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But so, for that reason, the arcades had a value over the home device, right? Like, spending a quarter on that arcade game, like you couldn't get that experience anywhere else. And as the consoles came to penetrate, And the tech caught up, right, to where you could pretty much get the same thing on the home console as you could in the arcade. And to me, that exact moment was Street Fighter 2 coming out on the Super Nintendo.
Mm.
That's what killed the arcade for me personally.
Right.
And I think probably for a lot of people, like as soon as we like saved up and got that game on Super Nintendo, we stopped going to the Stanford arcade, which was our closest arcade. Now, so like the value offering for the consumer was that, you know, I can do this at home for free now. No, well, for a single upfront cost and not pay per play. So why did Japan keep going with arcades when that, you know, they kind of had the same tech shift as the US? Someone told me this. I don't know, like I haven't done my own research on this, but the cultural reason for Japan keeping on with arcades, salarymen in Japan, which, you know, is just kind of like your regular white collar worker. Someone told me that they basically are like an important salaryman. If you're important at your company or business, then you stay late because you have a lot to do. And what happened is that, you know, this would translate to the home life. And so if you come home early and your wife sees you come home early, she's like, oh, you're a loser, because you're not important at the office. And so what ended up happening is salarymen would get off work and go to the arcade for 3 hours and kill some time so that they get home late. I don't know how true this is, but this is what was described to me.
Right, definitely. Okay, cool. And I wanted to know a little bit about, you know, kind of briefly, how do you describe, you know, your family's, you know, legacy and your dad's legacy with gaming and your kind of responsibility to kind of carry that torch? Or do you feel like you maybe don't have a responsibility? Or how do you perceive that huge, you know, symbolic undertaking? Right, because that's a big deal, man. You know, I know you've probably have heard this many times. That's amazing that you get to bring not just work in the gaming industry, but you get to bring the same aesthetic and the same values and the same principles into the modern era.
Totally, yeah, and you know, I mean, gaming. Like I love gaming since day one. You know, independent of any of the family stuff, or maybe that's part of it. But I've always been a huge gamer, and you know, I feel like my sort of what I think I can bring to the industry is making gaming something that people, you know, I sort of want to get rid of that gamer word, not get rid of it, but just make a lot of people remember that, like, oh, gaming's for everybody. And, you know, there are categories of gaming and you enjoy, you know, whatever categories you enjoy, but, you know, we all kind of can get behind this, and frankly, it like helps us like interact with each other. You know, it's a purpose. Gaming provides a purpose, right? And it has this unique ability to bring us together where, you know, we can always get behind the idea of like, let's meet up and, you know, throw down some rounds at whatever game we like. And you know, that's going to be a fun time. And if you add in like the arcade experience, then we might meet some people along the way. And, you know, it really adds that social element that, arcade play style lends itself to, I think is really powerful and important. And, you know, when you look at what modern tech can do, with connectivity and apply that to the arcade machine, it gets really exciting, right? Where you can, you know, your high score lists, are not only localized, but they're, just me and my friends. And you can, start to challenge people when they're in the same place remotely with notifications, get local events going, and bring groups of people together. I would love to, like, we're planning at some point to do a collaboration with like Tinder to do singles nights and stuff like that around the machines. The pandemic has not been awesome for that. But maybe this summer it'll be a prime time.
Definitely. When I first came into contact with a Polycade machine, it was in a sneaker store, and I was like, this is incredible. And I remember actually seeing images of the cabinet on like Pinterest, I think, and Tumblr, and just, online, because I'm always looking at cool cabinets. And once I found out that you were the person making them, I got really curious, like, what are your values in your brand and your aesthetic and your design? It obviously has a strong brand identity, but like, what are the things that sort of anchor your the choosing of the colors that you choose and the branding that you do? What are the values? What are you trying to express, maybe philosophically?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, the design focus was, how do I take this, like, this thing that has a very specific design and like a kind of style to it, and reinvent it without losing it. The goal really was to restylize the cabinet so that it could work in places where people, arcade machines have a certain connotation. Typically it's the basement and garage these days, right? With the exception of guys like us that are like, that should be in the living room because it's art. So the goal was to create a design that still kind of like hints back to that arcade machine style and culture, while being something that could be like front and center in a hotel lobby, and like everyone's like, that makes sense. And so that's where the design comes from. And the kind of the long tail story on that is that, I always wanted to build my own arcade machine, finally sat down to do it, told my wife that I was going to put an arcade machine in the living room. She's an interior designer, said absolutely not. And so I said, well, wait a minute, let's, find a design that makes sense. So I, made 100 designs and was like, what do you think? Which one can go in the living room? And so we worked that out. When it comes to the colors and aesthetic, always just loved the like Atari stripes and Activision stripes. If you saw like the old, like the old Pitfall cover, they're so vibey. I kind of hate gradients for the most part, and so I think they look cheap mostly. So the solid color stripes just like so good. They give you that like 70s like early arcade vibe. And the other thing that I really love about sort of the stripe vibe, also if you look back at like a lot of the old Timeout arcades, they used our colors. So and in stripe format, pretty much. So like it was kind of that sort of sun, yellow, orange, red, with then like a couple blues in there.
I wish those were like still around, that we could still like visit some.
You know what? Totally. I like had a moment where I was like, oh my God, maybe we can trademark Timeout Arcades.
That'd be sick. Yeah.
And then I remembered there's that like English company called Timeout that like owns everything Timeout related.
Oh yeah, word.
Yeah. So but so like that the stripe aesthetic also comes from the Timeout arcades and the colors specifically. Lastly, I will mention that for our product and design, one of the goals was for like product design and branding. I mean, our logo is directly inspired by it's the Pong font, and you know, clear calls to Nintendo as well. So those were like the logo inspiration. The colors and stripes are also aimed at being highly what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like a canvas, where, you know, we like to think of the product as like a bare brick, right? Highly skinnable. It can sort of be anyone's style, right? By just sort of easily changing the colors, skinning the outside. All of the brand and design is aimed at being sort of like a blank canvas, while also having its like fun, playful, bright color side to it.
Right. I love it. Is there any opportunity or anything in the cards for a Polycade arcade?
So yes, I would. I mean, that's like
That's like the
one
goal,
dream.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the last thing a VC wants to hear is that you're going to put a brick and mortar place up. But
Right.
but you know what's interesting right now, I don't want to say we are actually considering that more strongly than we ever have, because the pandemic has basically, you know, wrecked retail. And so there's some pretty fantastic deals out there that would actually might make sense right now. And that retail or that experience, the Polycade arcade, would be like, yeah, I don't get me thinking about that, because I've got other shit to do, and I really want that. Like some kind of like, yeah, experiential retail / arcade / like stream rooms and stuff.
Man.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because, and
That's
the reason why, yeah, definitely. Cause it's like, when I think about Polycade, when I see the cabinets, when I experienced them, when I played on them, it's so ahead of its time. You know what I mean? Like in a good way though, like, but it's cutting edge, man. Like, because like you're trying to get people who maybe stop playing games to get back into games. You have to explain that to them. But then there's also the person that's like, they don't see they're like, I got my Xbox, or I got my PlayStation, or I have my PC, you know, why am I going to play on a super cool, awesomely designed thing that deconstructs the notion of a gamer? Like, it's so cutting edge that it seems like it would really flourish in its own space, in its own environment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Totally. Yeah. And really get that chance to like sort of rope people in and, you know, an easy place to bring your friends and yeah.
And it's like connected. Like I said, I experienced in a sneakerware store. So it's like ingrained in my mind, like that it's kind of subtly connected to streetwear culture in a way. You know what I mean? It's connected to that era of like, it's not just a t-shirt. You know what I mean? This isn't just a game. You know what I mean?
You know, you make a great point. Like, I've always been attracted to streetwear culture, but I'm not a sneakerhead.
Of course, yeah.
You know, but like I've had a hard time like figuring out why I'm so attracted to sneaker or streetwear culture. I mean, I've always like, you know, loved the skater vibe and everything like that. But you make a great point that it's like, there's something about that like sort of streetwear, street life that like really comes back to the arcade machine, right? Where it's like, we're out in the world and exploring the world, and the arcade machine is the like gaming platform for us.
Yeah, it makes play, it takes play serious. You know what I mean? It's like play is not just play. It's actually like an important part of culture, you know?
Yeah, totally. Right. And where when you're out with your friends, like that's a fixture that is like part of that social experience.
Definitely. Cool. And that kind of leads me to my next question about, can we expect, or have you thought about, or maybe have worked on, and we couldn't find it, about working with fighting game tournaments, fighting arcade sticks? Because me and Kai are big fighting game fans. We grew up on Street Fighter 2 Turbo and SNES and MK2, all that. And it would be really cool if we got the Polycade aesthetics in competitive fighting game arcade sticks and got to see the pros use them. Is that
It's
anywhere
needed.
in the future?
100% a dream. I mean, or you know, something we want. For me, this is gonna sound funny, but when I started Polycade, the last Street Fighter I was aware of, and I'm a gamer, was Street Fighter 2. At the time, Street Fighter 5 had just come out.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I'm a gamer, you know, I'm not like playing Call of Duty every day. I'm not, you know, so I don't like, I wasn't looking up every new iteration of Street Fighter, but I like did not even know 3, 4, and 5 existed.
Right.
And like much less like my friends and literally everyone that reaches out to Polycade is like, do you have Street Fighter 2? And I say no, but you can get 5 on Steam. They're like, oh, 5? Okay. Like they had never heard of it either.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
they probably don't have Steam either. They probably don't have Steam. They're like, Steam? What is it?
Dude, the 95% of our customers have never heard of Steam.
Yeah. Yeah.
They like don't even know what it is. They're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, yeah, my internet streams.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, what I look at it as is like, I see Polycade as like the hardware to the philosophy that we're writing about with arcade stuff. It's like you're doing the actual real thing. You know what I mean? Like you're putting aesthetically pleasing, cool, easy to install arcade cabinets in homes and bars all around the country, not because people are saying the world needs it, but because you know it's important to life.
Right.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like it really is important that we have something that looks cool that kind of slowly steers the narrative of what gaming has become. Because right now, and I do play games. I mean, I have an Xbox. It's not cool, man. Like Xbox is cool, but like where we're going with the narrative of gaming, I'm like, this is super stale. You know, it's so like it's just like even like Street Fighter, which I love Street Fighter. It's like I don't play Street Fighter 5. I don't play like not because I don't love Street Fighter, because I do, but it's just it's not the arcade. It's not like I'm playing with people in an arcade. Like playing online with lag and everything else that goes along with it is just not cool. You know what I mean?
You're missing the experience, right?
Yeah, that's why we play, you know.
And I mean, Tyler, he mentioned this early on in the interview, but it's those two extremes, and there's no communication in that mid ground. You know, so in every sport, or even if you want to, you know, say something like chess, there's different. Everybody on every level kind of understands the game and the concept, but it's not like that with gaming or whatever. So if you go to basketball or whatever, football, baseball, there's like a mid-casual, you know, intersection between people who know the game on an extreme level and then people who know the game on a casual level. But there's that disconnect of communication in the mid ground for the gamer, and that's where you kind of get these terms. Oh, you know, the gamer, and then you have a distinct description. They don't think of poly arcade most of the times, you know, and that stylized aesthetic that you've created, because it's an art piece, man, but people don't look at it that way. But
much appreciated. And Kai, you mentioned a great thing, like that like middle ground when it comes to something like basketball, right? Like it's we all learned how to play basketball as kids. We all know how basketball works. There's a huge meta game in basketball, and if you're really into it, you understand the meta game and like all the details and everything else, right? So like you can have that divide of like, you know, I'm casually into basketball and you're hardcore into basketball, and we can go watch a basketball game together, right?
Right.
Gaming doesn't have that as much, right? Where like, and maybe that's changing gradually, but because like this is a big problem in esports, where, you know, esports is for people who play the games that are being played in esports, right? They have an extremely difficult time in attracting viewership from anyone that doesn't play those games.
Right.
Yep.
because they don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
it seems like basketball, football, and other sports have been integrated into modern life. It's a part of American life, to use the term loosely. But it's like
Right.
gaming isn't a part of American life. Gaming is like the reject. It's like the counterculture. It's like the stuff that it shouldn't be this way, but that's how they've kind of made it, violence and video games and everything else. And that you rot your brain out if you play video games, which we know, Nolan Bushnell said people will be better if people play more games. Like your dad has literally said, I know video games help people be better people, right? And I think he's a pretty credible source, when it comes to figuring out whether or not games actually help people or not. So I think, and I'm curious what you think about this, gaming still needs to be integrated into American life in the same way that it's integral to life, to many lives in Japan. What do you think about that? That maybe gaming is sort of isolated as it's this is what the nerds do, or this is what the freaks do. It's like, no, we just play it because we are living,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And this is kind of where like you've honed in on one of my like missions here is basically like you said, gaming is it's like ever since I was 12, gaming has been like pushed into a category, right? This is for like kids, this is for teenagers, this is for gamers, this is for nerds and like people who like don't
Right.
have a life,
Right.
And so like that's where I think that the connotation is wrong, and like there's gaming is so much broader than that, and let's like bring it back down to earth and like show the world how like this is a key part of us just interacting and like socializing and like getting off our phones too, right? Like we all now have this like sort of entertainment like requirement, and like as soon as shit's not entertaining, we're like back on our phone. And so I think that like in a weird way, digital entertainment that can like capture us but also keep us connected to each other is pretty important in this next phase of humanity. Also want to say that if you think about the future too, and this is, I'm going to go into the weeds a little bit here, as we have things like robotics and AI that are slated to steal millions and millions of jobs, right?
Definitely, yep.
People talk about this as like doom and gloom, and certainly there are issues there, and like how it happens is going to be a big part of the like whether it's all at once or what. But I think that people find a way, and I mean, I don't know what, 5 years ago, an influencer was not a thing. And so like, that's a whole new job category today. So I think, people will continue to find a way. But even, I mean, gaming has this remarkable ability to provide and create meaning. And like provide people with meaning to their lives, right? Where like you have like, you can achieve things in gaming. Add in like some of the stuff that's happening in like blockchain and gaming now, and we're really probably going to see people like earning a living by playing games, not unlike World of Warcraft from the old days. But really taking that, and Twitch totally, but really taking all of this to the next level, and I think gaming will continue to be increasingly important, especially, and will create more jobs.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to that, and we want to say, thank you, because we think that, of course, what your dad did was legendary, paved the way for you and us and so many others to make a career in gaming. But then also we feel like you are paving the way for gaming to be considered a lifestyle thing. Like it's a part of lifestyle. It's a part of what's cool. It's a part of pop culture. It's a part of it's a gateway to the 70s and to nostalgia, and so we see what you're doing as like essential to that next wave of gaming. You know what I mean? Like it's so key because like when we talk about what we're talking about, we can show people Polycade. We can say like, this guy gets it, you know, like aesthetic design, his wife's an interior designer. This has to look cool. It has to be a part of life. Like obviously gaming, like there's very, very few, I could count them on one hand, of people who are preaching the message that you're preaching, which is that games are for people. They're for people to come together, which is insane. You would think that that would be a lot more of a common message, right? Like
totally. Yeah. And it's chatted about here and there, like connecting people across the world. And that's cool. Like I've, you know,
great.
I mean, and that's, it's super awesome. But I think also like we forget about like connecting people like right here, you know, like
Right.
what about the high fives?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so exciting, you know, and I'm just like so looking forward to what the future of gaming holds, because I think you're breaking that, you know, Twitch streamer, esports gamer narrative. You're breaking it up and spreading it out amongst the people. So, you know, we're going to continue to be writing about, you know, the cool stuff that you all are doing and continue to spreading the word. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Much appreciated for the love.
Absolutely.
We've got another feature that we're planning that kind of like came out of pandemic, but very excited about that and hope you know, it's going to be a little ways away, but we'll definitely send you guys the early version.
Oh, can't wait. So let's talk about, I got about 2 more questions. One, the last question will be about what's the future of Polycade? What should we be looking out for, and how can we get connected and stay updated and stay tuned with what you're doing? But before we get into that, I want to ask a little bit about, and then Kai can ask any questions if he has any, about how does nostalgia influence your work? How does the decades, you know, that you grew up in and before you, and, you know, your childhood, how does it affect the work that you do? And how important is nostalgic media, old movies, old pop content into delivering what you're doing? Because it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of counterculture in a way, you know, it's kind of, you know, you're delivering these great pieces of media that are direct representative of the decades that came before. So how does that kind of play a role into what you do?
A couple ways. So like, you know, on one hand, you know, for the longest time, it was, there was like a lot of the old school games that I remember loving so much are just like, were not accessible, right? Like I couldn't get them. They were not available to purchase anywhere. And, you know, I like lost this sort of piece of my childhood that I wanted to reconnect with because of just, you know, I don't know, business working the way business works, and like, you know, Capcom not publishing a new version of Street Fighter. So the only way I could get Street Fighter or, you know, a bunch of other games was to hunt down the like old cabinet, or like, you know, get a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and that works and all that. Like I've got my collector threads, but you know, move a couple times over like a few years, and quickly your like collection of cartridges, you're like, why do I carry this around everywhere for that?
Right.
And even when you like decide, oh, I'm gonna pull that out and plug it in, like that's a project.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be really motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And so meanwhile, like the tech is here that this could just work beautifully as like, you know, I should be able to have a console that just plays anything. That's not the tech's there. It's a licensing problem.
Yeah.
And so you know, I felt like that was a problem. You know, we should be able to reconnect with the media, kind of similar to art, right? Like the Mona Lisa, like you can always kind of like look that up and check it out and be like, wow, that's, you know, I can reconnect with this piece of art, right? That is like part of our culture. Video games are, of course, a little bit of a different thing because you have to have, you know, hardware and controllers and stuff to run them. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. And so like, why can't I reconnect? We're missing this sort of museum ability of video games. And if you're technical and there's ways to get those old school experiences, but like not for everyone, right? Most people don't know how to do that. And so like this should be available on a museum level for everyone, not to mention like, the old games are still great and we'd like to play them. And if we layered some new tech on top of those old games, it would also renew their sort of engagement, right? If I could have a shared high score list with my friends, then I'm really interested in playing Pango again and Donkey Kong Jr. Beyond just like reconnecting with the nostalgia of it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that like maintaining access is very important. And by extension, like publishers should get paid for their the stuff that they own. And right now, in most cases, that's not possible. The like retro nostalgia and kind of all that, I just love the vibe. So like, and I think there's what is it, like every 30 years, like we repeat like that, the 30-year previous decade of like, that's what's cool. Like we're just entering 90s now, I think, or maybe like, actually maybe we're going into 2000, maybe it's a 20-year cycle. It's 20 or 30-year cycle. But like, I think those like threads of nostalgia are just, they make, especially, whether you live through it or not, media does a great job of like characterizing decades, right? And so like, as an example, when I was a teenager, I was like obsessed with 60s culture. It was all about like hippies and tie-dye. And I did not live through that, but I was able to absorb it and like be it, and it felt good. It felt, it felt cool. It felt old. And I think that, it's super, by extension, it's super important to sort of capture that for the older arcade eras as well. Love the barcades that are popping up everywhere. That's been a really successful thing in the US in the last 8 years. And it's just retro arcade machines in plus beer, right? Renewed the arcade. Which is also part of where we come from as Polycade, is like, that works and people want this social experience with video games. And now we just need it to be in more places than these like specialized venues.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I have really long answers to your questions.
No, it's good. This is good. You kind of mentioned a little bit about a big thing I think that drives the work you do is accessibility, giving people access, even when you were a kid, giving people that same access or giving people a lot better access. Do you, even though you are, seeking investments and speaking with VCs, do you like deep down think of your project as like a Napster or Bitcoin blockchain revolutionary technology do you like look at it on that same level as the next chapter of disruptive technology? Or is it like something that's more casual because you feel like this is something that everyone should have and it's a no-brainer for you? Or do you have like a more of a Star Wars exciting, I don't know, I think when I think Luke Skywalker, I think of like, everybody counted him out when he like showed up. You know what I mean? Like that. Yeah.
I mean, world domination is absolutely in our plans.
Okay, good. That tells me everything I need to know.
and really, by extension, like I think that, a gaming platform that can be in your home and out of home and sort of like help you drive your social life and your not social life is super compelling, for me personally, and I think for a lot of people, right? Like like so many of my friends and otherwise I know, like, you know, I don't know, it's easy to sort of let yourself in the modern day be like, I'm gonna stay home and not see people and stuff, and like that, there's like a whole loneliness epidemic that is directly associated to, you know, social media and increased tech, of people that like sort of fall into that kind of hermit rabbit hole. And many studies have shown that, like, you know, community and like a sense of community directly affects happiness. And so, you know, when you pair sort of like our modern necessity for entertainment with that sort of community element, then I think that we can really, like, you know, both make a difference as well as be a super fun, like, cultural center of people's lives.
Right.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. Kai, any comments or questions or?
I think we pretty much covered everything. I think his answers, I mean, we got the inspiration down.
Yeah, we got everything. Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like.
yeah.
What's next for Polycade in the future of gaming? How can we, you know, even if we don't have room to order a cabinet yet and install it yet, what can we do to be involved and be a part of it and follow everything that's going on?
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, we're really putting a lot of focus into the software these days, and so you know, the softwares, would love to. Right now, it's basically like a unified launcher. Soon, it's going to have shared leaderboards and stuff like that. Would love any thoughts that you have on the software, and once we get sort of a whole new feature set rolled out later this year, we'll definitely be looking for a lot of help on software distribution. You know, one thing that we're thinking at some point would be a great way to get cabinets out into the world is, you know, Polycade Army asking their local bar to install a Polycade would mean a lot, probably, for distribution.